Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome to today's deep dive. Whether you're sketching out a business plan for a new brand, or maybe you're just obsessively reading the back of every single serum bottle in your cabinet.
We've all been there.
Right. Or if you're just curious about the massive kind of invisible machinery behind the business of beauty, you are in the right place today. We are pulling back the curtain on the skincare industry.
And it really is an industry that touches almost everyone's daily routine. But the actual mechanics of how a product gets made from scratch remain incredibly opaque to the average consumer.
Completely opaque, which is why today we're working off some really fantastic excerpts from a 2026 industry report. It's titled Private Label Skincare in the USA, a comprehensive guide. And our mission today is to basically track the journey of a skincare product from a raw idea in a founder's head, all the way to that polished, heavy glass bottle sitting right there on your bathroom shelf.
Right.
And we're going to look at this through the lens of three critical pillars, the things that determine whether a brand survives or dies: speed, safety, and credibility.
What's fascinating here is the massive shift in the industry's baseline expectations. Because the phrase private label historically carried this stigma, of a brand just buying a vat of generic cheap lotion, slapping a custom logo on a flimsy plastic bottle, and calling it a day.
Like the classic white label swap.
Exactly. But that model is virtually dead now. Today, the private label landscape is built on incredibly sophisticated end-to-end partnerships. We're talking about highly compliant regulatory documentation, advanced sustainable packaging engineering, and serious formulation rigor. Modern brands are securing reliable, scalable supply chains that honestly rival legacy cosmetic houses.
And looking at the market reality right now, the drivers pushing this industry forward are just relentless. I mean, there is sustained momentum in clean beauty, vegan formulations, and something I find really intriguing, which is personalization driven by actual point-of-sale data insights from major retailers.
Yeah, the data feedback loop is huge right now.
It is. But how a brand navigates this depends so heavily on their sales channel. I like to look at direct-to-consumer, or DTC brands, as speedboats. They're agile, right? They favor really fast reformulation cycles to jump on TikTok trends. They test the waters quickly, and they desperately need flexible minimum production runs just to survive.
Because they can't afford massive inventory.
Exactly. But then you look at traditional retail channels, like the big pharmacies or the beauty superstores. Those are like massive cruise ships. They demand shelf-ready presentations, bulletproof supply chains, and absolute authority on claims and testing before they'll even consider giving you an inch of shelf space.
And those channel dynamics intersect directly with geography, which the report highlights beautifully. The U.S. market is heavily fractured when it comes to skincare preferences. The regional splits outlined in the source are actually quite stark.
Yeah, tell me about the coasts versus the rest of the country.
Well, if a brand is targeting coastal markets, the demand leans heavily into premium, clean formulations and sustainable packaging. A shopper in those markets is picking up the bottle, turning it over, scrutinizing the ingredient disclosure. They're demanding a very specific minimalist aesthetic and a clear environmental ethos.
So what happens when that exact same brand tries to launch in the Midwest or the South? Do they just ship the exact same product?
Often, no. They really can't. The retail channels in the Midwest and Southern markets prioritize value-driven pricing and broad, reliable access. They certainly still want high-quality products, but the driving force is everyday accessibility and consistency.
Makes sense.
So a buyer in those regions might prioritize a really durable, larger format pump bottle that offers great value over a tiny, easily breakable glass dropper bottle that just screams coastal premium.
That is so interesting. So next time you walk down the skincare aisle at your local pharmacy, really take a look at the shelves. Those regional strategies dictate exactly what products, what price points, and what packaging end up right in front of you. It's mapped out long before the delivery truck even arrives in your town.
And bringing those specific products to those specific shelves requires finding the perfect manufacturing partner.
Which brings us to the supplier landscape. According to the report, selecting a manufacturing partner is the single most strategic decision a brand makes, period. It dictates your product quality, your speed to market, your regulatory readiness.
It dictates everything.
Yeah. And the source breaks this down into three core partner models. I like to think of this as a choose-your-own adventure for building a skincare empire.
Yeah.
So, path number one, Full-service contract manufacturers, these are the heavy listers. They handle everything from the initial bench chemistry to the quality assurance, all the way to final packaging and assembly.
It's a massive capital and time commitment, but you do get a highly integrated process.
Right. Then there's path number 2, which is the white label producer. This is the speed-to-market play. They offer ready-to-ship formulations where the chemistry is already finished, it's tested, and it's literally sitting in drums. You essentially just bring your branding and your marketing storytelling.
But wait, if the chemistry's already done, aren't 50 different brands just selling the exact same moisturizer with a different font on the bottle?
It happens way more often than consumers realize.
Really?
Oh, absolutely. White label producers will often have a core chassis, essentially a base formula. Different brands might purchase that exact same base, but the manufacturer might offer slight micro-tweaks, so perhaps altering the fragrance profile slightly, or changing a botanical extract so it fits a specific marketing story. But fundamentally, yes, the structural chemistry is identical. It is up to the brand to win on marketing and customer acquisition. Okay, that makes total sense. And then we have path number 3, which is co-manufacturers. This is a much deeper collaboration where you might actually own the intellectual property of the formula, but you're leasing their specialized equipment and their facility capacity to actually produce the goods at scale.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, every single one of those paths involves very distinct trade-offs in control, cost, lead times, and flexibility. And within those paths, a brand has to decide between a turnkey program and custom formulation.
Turnkey being the fast route.
Yes. Turnkey programs give you those stock formulas with optional customization. It provides incredible stability and a very fast launch window. Custom formulation, on the other hand, means you're starting from scratch. You have total control over the actives, the delivery systems, the specific texture, the sensory attributes. It's necessary if you're going for highly unique, differentiated, clean label claims, but it takes exponentially longer and costs significantly more.
So how does a brand actually vet these partners? Because the report mentions this massive due diligence checklist, and it starts with GMP and ISO certifications.
Right. Good manufacturing practices, or GMP, an International Organization for Standardization, or ISO certifications. These are non-negotiable baselines.
Yes, they have them.
You have to verify that their facility operates under strict hygiene, traceability, and quality control standards. If a batch gets contaminated, you need to know their system will catch it before it ships out to stores. But beyond the facility, you have to assess data ownership. Who actually owns the intellectual property of the formula? Because if the manufacturer owns it, you're effectively trapped. You cannot take your successful product to a cheaper facility later on.
Oh, wow. And let's talk about MOQs, minimum order quantities, because this seems like where a lot of brand dreams just get completely crushed. A manufacturer might say, sure, we'll make your custom night cream, but you have to buy 50,000 units of it on day one.
It's a massive financial hurdle. Tying up all your startup capital and inventory before you even know if the market actually wants your product is incredibly risky. This is why the report strongly recommends standardizing an RFP, a request for proposal process.
You don't just email a manufacturer and ask for a price quote.
Exactly. You create a rigorous scorecard.
Right.
You grade multiple potential partners on their formulation capabilities, their testing scope, their sustainability commitments, and their MOQ flexibility.
And then there are the SLAs, the service level agreements. I honestly had to laugh because reading through the report section on escalation protocols and performance penalties made me realize how unapologetically nerdy the back end of the beauty industry really is.
Hey, I will gladly defend the SLA.
I knew you would.
Without a service-level agreement outlining specific financial penalties for missed deadlines or out-of-spec batches, your brand is just a house of cards. If your manufacturer is 6 weeks late delivering your summer sunscreen, your entire seasonal launch is dead. You need contractual leverage. And that leverage becomes even more vital when we step into the regulatory landscape.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. I was reading the legal section of the report, and I literally had to do a double take. Under the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, cosmetic products in the United States do not require pre-market FDA approval. None. A manufacturer can formulate a product, bottle it, and a brand can sell it without the FDA ever stamping approved on the paperwork.
I know it sounds alarming to a lot of consumers, but the framework is built around post-market enforcement.
Okay.
Even without pre-market approval, the FDA actively oversees the industry. The critical catch is that brands are 100% responsible for ensuring their products are safe, properly labeled and truthfully represented. Misbranding or adulteration is strictly prohibited by federal law.
So nobody's checking your homework before you launch.
Right. But if a consumer has an adverse reaction, or if an independent lab tests your product and finds contamination, the liability falls entirely on the brand.
So if the FDA isn't checking your homework, but you carry all of the liability, how does a brand actually protect itself?
The paper trail. The undeniable importance of rigorous documentation. You have to build a fortress of evidence before you sell a single bottle.
A fortress of evidence. I like that. What does that look like?
It means demanding certificates of analysis, or COAs, for every single raw material that enters the facility. It means keeping meticulous batch records. It means running comprehensive stability data, which involves putting your product in high-heat incubators to prove it won't separate or grow mold over its 2-year shelf life. Retailers won't even consider stocking a product unless you hand them a comprehensive product dossier proving you have done this testing.
And the report points out that this documentation is even more critical right now because of all the clean beauty trends. Like if a brand wants to plaster vegan or clean or ethically sourced on their packaging, they can't just rely on good intentions. What happens if a manufacturer accidentally uses a beeswax derivative in a so-called vegan product?
Well, the FDA might not catch it on day one, but an independent consumer watchdog group or a class action law firm certainly will.
Yeah, they're watching closely.
Modern claims require rigorous third-party testing and independent lab verification. You need objective proof of ingredient identity, potency, and heavy metal or contaminant levels. If you claim an ingredient is ethically sourced, you need the life cycle assessments and supplier qualifications documented. Without verifiable evidence, you risk catastrophic consumer backlash.
Okay, so if the legal and operational guardrails are that intense, it must put serious pressure on the actual chemistry.
Oh, absolutely.
The report walks through what I like to call the divas of the skincare world, these incredibly popular product archetypes that everyone wants but that are notoriously difficult to stabilize. Let's start with vitamin C serum. It's everywhere for brightening skin tone, but the report stresses how unstable it is. Why does it require such intense manufacturing oversight?
Vitamin C, particularly L-ascorbic acid, is highly reactive. It loves to oxidize the moment it's exposed to light, air, or water.
So it basically wants to destroy itself.
Exactly. If the manufacturer does not meticulously balance the pH and utilize an entirely oxygen-free filling process, the product will begin degrading in the vat. Consumers know what this looks like. The serum turns a dark, rusty brown and smells metallic. To prevent that, you also need packaging that provides serious UV protection, like opaque or dark amber glass.
That makes a lot of sense. I was also looking at the section on hyaluronic acid, the big hydration hero. The report mentions that premium formulations use a dynamic duo of different molecular weights. Why isn't just one type of hyaluronic acid enough?
Because of how it interacts with the skin barrier. Low molecular weight hyaluronic acid has a small enough structure to rapidly penetrate the epidermis, drawing moisture deep into the skin layers. But you pair that with high molecular weight hyaluronic acid, which is too large to penetrate.
Oh, so it sits on top.
Right, it sits on the surface, acting like a breathable, moisture-locking blanket. Getting those ratios right without making the formula feel sticky or prone to pilling under makeup is a major formulation challenge.
And then you have niacinamide, which is incredibly popular for barrier support.
Yeah.
But again, the report flags it as a chemistry challenge because of pH compatibility.
Niacinamide is fantastic, but if it's formulated at a pH that is too low, or if a consumer layers it directly with a strong acid, it can convert into niacin.
No, not bad.
It causes severe skin flushing and irritation. A manufacturer has to ensure the base formula buffers the niacinamide perfectly so it remains stable and gentle over time.
Those are the daily staples. But the report also highlights archetypes that require massive, specialized manufacturing capabilities. Retinol night creams, for example. Retinol degrades incredibly quickly under environmental stressors.
Formulating a true retinol requires robust photostability data. The manufacturing environment often needs specialized lighting during the mixing phase, and the active ingredient is frequently microencapsulated to protect it until it actually touches the skin.
Wow.
And the packaging must physically block both light and air, typically utilizing airless pump technology.
So next time you're shopping and you see a retinol cream packaged in a completely clear, transparent jar where you have to scoop it out with your fingers, you now know exactly why that is a massive red flag. The active ingredient is likely degrading the moment it sits under the harsh fluorescent store lights.
It is essentially a useless product by the time you buy it. Another incredibly demanding archetype is SPF 30 sunscreen.
Because it's a drug, right?
Exactly. Because sunscreen makes a functional health claim regarding disease and burn prevention, it crosses into over-the-counter drug territory in the U.S. It demands rigorous testing for broad-spectrum coverage. The emulsions have to remain perfectly stable under vastly different temperatures. Just think about a tube sitting in a hot car all summer.
Right, it can't separate.
The packaging must also accommodate very strict regulatory labeling requirements for active UV filters.
And finally, the report details ceramide moisturizers. These are focused entirely on barrier repair.
Which requires a very delicate, precise ratio. You need humectants to attract moisture into the skin, and a specific blend of emollients and occlusives, like ceramides and lipids, to seal it in. Ensuring that precise emulsion stays consistent without separating into a watery mess from batch to batch is a major test of a manufacturer's QA and mixing capabilities.
It really makes you appreciate the intense science suspended inside that little pump bottle. But the outside of the bottle is just as critical. Packaging is a massive differentiator right now. Consumers are actively demanding recyclability and a major reduction in virgin plastic use.
Right.
The aesthetic has to communicate those clean label values. And one specific detail from the source that stood out to me was the shift toward lightweight, slotted packaging. How does changing the shape of a box impact the bottom line?
It comes down to transport efficiency and logistics costs. If you design secondary packaging, the outer box, so that it slots together tightly and ships flat to the filler and then packs densely onto a shipping pallet, you can move significantly more units per shipping container.
You're not paying to ship air.
You're quite literally paying to ship less empty air. This directly reduces fuel consumption, lowers the carbon footprint of the product, and drastically cuts freight costs.
And freight costs are a nightmare right now when we look at the post-pandemic supply chain realities outlined in the report. Supply chain resilience is survival at this point. Lead times for specific raw botanical ingredients or custom glass pumps have lengthened from weeks to months.
Right.
How are brands keeping inventory on the shelves if they can't get the parts?
They're executing a strategy called nearshoring. Instead of relying on a single massive facility overseas and risking a 6-week delay because a cargo ship is stuck at a port, brands are shifting to regional sourcing and manufacturing much closer to their final market.
Right.
They're purposefully holding higher levels of safety stock for critical components, and they're doing intense scenario analyses. They sit down and map out exactly what to do if there's an input shortage, a port strike, or a sudden regulatory ban on a specific chemical filter. They build a formal business continuity plan so they aren't scrambling in a crisis.
They already have the solution mapped out. Okay, to pull all of this dense operational strategy together, the report provides a 5-step playbook for launching a private label product. Let's just unpack the real-world friction of this journey. Step 1. Define your product categories and your target markets.
This is where you clarify the specific claims you want to make. You cannot just say, I want an anti-aging cream. You have to say, I want a vegan, ceramide-based night cream targeting the coastal premium market that passes EU regulatory standards. Your formulation and regulatory requirements stem entirely from that definition.
Okay, step 2. Shortlist your suppliers and issue those standardized RFPs. So you're sending out that scorecard we talked about to compare their mixing capabilities, their lead times, and their testing scope.
Which flows directly into step 3. Evaluate using a structured scoring framework. This is where you remove the emotion. You grade the manufacturers on their quality assurance track record, their packaging network, and the total cost of ownership. You might find a manufacturer with a cheap per unit cost, but if their MOQ is massive and their defect rate is high, they fail the scorecard.
Step 4.
Yeah.
Develop the formula and the packaging. And this is the hardest part. You're staring down that choice between the speed of a turnkey stock formula and the painful, expensive uniqueness of custom development. You're running stability tests, tweaking the viscosity, and finalizing the component sourcing.
And finally, step 5, pilot and scale. You never order 100,000 units on day one.
Never.
You run small production lots first, you validate how the product performs on the filling line, you check the final shelf appeal, and then you plan a scalable rollout with full retailer readiness and marketing support.
So what does this all mean? When we zoom out and look at everything from the stark regional market divides to the absolute necessity of an FDA compliance paper trail to the volatile chemistry of vitamin C and SPF emulsions, it means that private label skincare today is an incredibly sophisticated operation.
It really is.
It's a high-stakes blend of supply chain resilience, rigorous scientific documentation, and data-driven personalization.
Yeah.
It has evolved light years beyond just pouring generic lotion into a pretty jar.
It absolutely has. And this raises an important question based on where the report indicates the industry is heading next. We touched on data-driven personalization and the rise of modular packaging designs where components can be swapped out easily.
Yeah.
If packaging is becoming modular and active ingredients are being stabilized into adjustable boosters, are we moving toward a future where the traditional finished product sitting on a store shelf becomes completely obsolete?
Oh.
Will the private label market eventually just supply raw, highly tested, modular base creams and concentrated active serums that you, the consumer, customize and mix together at your own bathroom sink every single morning based on exactly what your skin needs that specific day?
Think about that for a second, the ultimate personalization. Bypassing the factory filling line entirely and going straight from the lab to your hands. That is something to keep in mind the next time you're washing your face. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the world around you, keep looking closely at the details, and we will catch you next time.